And we're back here on Open. Well, Cuba suffered a major loss on Friday as the death of their former leader, Fidel Castro, was announced. Here now to remember him, we remember the man and invite the man now who invited actually Fidel Castro to the Boogie Down Bronx, and the author of the book Knockout, Fidel Castro Visits the Bronx, Julio Pabon. And Julio, welcome. Good to have you back,
Always
bro.
a pleasure, always a pleasure.
Well, the irony is that we were here before, and you were talking about the book being released, coming out, talking about Fidel's visit to the Bronx. And subsequently now, right after the book is released,
It's like
he passes.
incredible timing. I mean, God works in mysterious ways. That's what I can say. I wrote the book only understanding that as a Bronxite who's been here since 1956, graduating from this school, and the fact that the Bronx has this still negative history, but people just look up at the Bronx and they think of Yankee Stadium, the Bronx Zoo, Botanical Garden. Those who go a little bit deeper know that Boogie Down Bronx is called Boogie Down Bronx because this is the home of hip hop. This is the home of breakdancing. This is the home of salsa. But this is also the home of famous people. Fidel Castro came here, and it was to my surprise that a lot of people that didn't know. I went to Fordham University to speak to students, and the chairman of the Department of Urban Studies, Dr. Mark Nason, who's been a professor at Fordham for 40 years, threw up his hands. He says, I never knew Fidel Castro came to the Bronx. Wow. So I felt that Bronx history needs to be told, and I thought I just wanted to write the book. Now, after writing the book, and the fact that Fidel Castro passed on a couple of days ago has been a roller coaster ride, because now everybody wants to find out, well, what's in the book, and why did I put his cover? The cover of the book has his picture on it. And why is it he there with a boxing glove? And why is it called Knockout?
Right, why is it called Knockout? Because, you know, when you look at Fidel Castro's life, a lot of people do feel a certain type of way, and it's not good.
Yeah, unfortunately, people forget that it was a revolution. And no revolution has ever been nice and good. The French Revolution, the American Revolution, the Russian Revolution. I mean, a revolution means a total change of a society from top to bottom. But if you look at the statistics, probably the Cuban Revolution has been the most humble, the most easiest revolution compared to the number of people that have died or have been tortured in other revolutions. The Cuban Revolution is minor compared to all that. But unfortunately, because Cuba is only 90 miles away from the United States and is the only country that has stood up to this country, every country in this planet has been affected by U.S. foreign policy. I mean, Lumumba in Africa, who was killed, the Dominican Republic revolution that was squashed when Juan Bush won the legal elections, Agustino Nieto, Sandino in Nicaragua. I mean, we can go on and on and on. If this country wants to get involved in the countries changing their policy, they'll either buy it, they'll either succumb it, or they'll kill it. And in Cuba, they haven't been able to do it. So that policy has led to a group of Cubans who came here, which the majority were white, they were upper class, and they have been basically the ones who have been talking about the horrors. But when you look down at the horrors, it's BS. When you look at the fact that Cuba went from 49% mortality rate for children prior to the revolution, today to 4%, which is the lowest in Latin America and in some developed countries. The average rate, ratio from doctors to patients, 1 doctor for every 135 people in Cuba. That's the highest ratio per capita in the entire planet. The highest education rate in all of Latin America. The expectancy rate of death at 79. And I can go on and on. So when people look at that, they say this is a different type of Cuba, right? This is a different type of Fidel.
So are you saying from your perspective that Fidel Castro got a bad rap?
Oh, nah, worse than the bad rap, man. The man was like worse than a bad rap. He is like the devil to U.S. foreign policy because he stood up to 11 presidents, man. Can you imagine 11 U.S. presidents cannot change the policy of Cuba? And it's only a little island. Why did Mandela come out of jail and go directly to Havana to meet Castro? Why? Why would Mandela, who everybody knows, went to meet Fidel first? People don't know that it was because of the Cubans that Namibia was liberated. It was because of the Cubans that apartheid was changed. It was because of the Cubans that Mandela was left to leave jail earlier. People don't know those stories, but that's because this government will have you want to know more about the Kardashians than or the latest iPhone than they know what's really happening around the world.
Let's talk about that visit in 1995. Obviously, we remember that. I remember that. I was there.
You were one of the the daring ones. We call those who went to that dinner los atrevidos, the daring ones.
Right.
And when Fidel signed my book, I gave him a book, said, could you please sign this? It was his book, History Will Absolve Me. That was his summation at the hearing where he was accused of the raid on La Moncada. And he wrote and he put, to my friend Julio, from one atrevido, one daring one to another. So I took my first book out and I signed to Fidel, from one atrevido to the other, Julio, and I have that, and I wanted to give it to him, but he passed away, so I'm going to go to Cuba and give it to his family.
So please share it with our viewers a little bit more. Take us back to 1995, because that was a very tenuous time, and you were able to actually land him here personally.
Yeah, well, that's what the book is about. The book is about a Puerto Rican who grew up in the South Bronx, being super poor, minority in the sense, homeless, going through the worst conditions, but never died. Like most of my friends my age, they're all dead or in jail. And how did I survive that? And how did I get involved in inviting a guy like Fidel Castro to come to the Bronx? Well, that's what the book is about. And what happened was in 1995, if you remember, we had a person by the name of Giuliani, very well known, but at the same time had a lot of issues with blacks and Latinos in 1995. 1995, the trains went up 25 cents, tuition up in CUNY. Anthony Baez was killed not far from here by Livodi, and Livodi had 11 counts of police abuse against citizens, but yet he was absolved on a technicality. There was so many issues in New York City. We were going through our own little revolution. And Fidel came here because the United Nations was celebrating their 50th anniversary. That's what it was, 50th anniversary, the most prestigious organization on this planet. And they had a gathering of all world leaders, 180 leaders, not ambassadors, but the leaders were coming. There was a lot of, you see, that's Fidel talking right now. There was a lot of talk about whether he was going to be allowed to come in or not, but of course the State Department is different from New York City, so of course he had visas to come. But interestingly enough, people don't know this. The Cuban exile community has an organization called La Fundación Nacional Cubana Americana, National Cuban Foundation. That organization is CIA funded. That organization has been known for doing a lot of terrorist attacks on Cuba and other parts. They came to New York and they met with Giuliani, and they convinced Giuliani that if he did something to embarrass Fidel Castro, that they would be looking forward and helping in future campaigns. You know what that means? Mm-hmm. So what Giuliani did, Giuliani organized a dinner for all 180 delegates and invited everyone except two, Fidel Castro and Yasser Arafat. As you know, New York has a very strong Jewish population. They also got to him, and Yasser Arafat was not going to get a welcome in this city, not if they can, play with it. But to my interest and to everybody's surprise, Yasser Arafat, being Arab and being Palestinian, there was a lot of Palestinians and a lot of Arabs in New York City in '95 that came out in support of him and said, hey, man, that's wrong. And they organized a dinner the same night that Giuliani had the dinner right across from One Financial Plaza, and more people attended that dinner, and they raised a lot of money for the PLO. But for Fidel Castro, no one said anything. Not one elected official, not one Latino leader. As a Bronxite who's been here all my life, I said, how's it gonna look that the mayor of the city of New York comes and disinvites a leader like Fidel Castro, whether you like him or not, whether you understand what's going on, he's a Latino invited by the United Nations. And then what really pushed me over the top was that Abyssinian Baptist Church and Calvin Butts had invited him months prior, so they had to write that on his schedule. So it's gonna look around the country that a Latino comes to New York City and the African-American community comes out and supports that brother, but the Latinos kept their mouths shut. And I said, that cannot happen. So I said, what can we do? Who am I? So we just got together and said, let's do a press release, at least. So I got Jimmy's Bronx Cafe, who told me, Julio, this is not gonna happen. This is just a press release, right? I said, yeah, so just a press release. Fidel Castro can't come to the Bronx. I mean, who are we? Mm-hmm. And then I got the National Puerto Rican Business Council, which are all Republicans and all capitalists. And they told me, are you crazy? You want us to put our name to a press release? I said, look, it's not gonna happen. It's just, but it'll make us look good. And the Cubans are very loyal. If in the future the blockade comes down and this Puerto Rican business organization was on the press release supporting him, we would probably be the ones that the Cubans would want to do business with us in the future. So even though they're Republicans and capitalists, they're very smart capitalists. They said, put us down on the press release. It's just a press release. And then when he comes to get the briefing, he gets a copy of the press release and he says, tell my Puerto Rican brothers that for me this is like winning a Nobel Prize. I'll be there. That created havoc. Secret Service, everybody telling him no, no, no. Fidel being the man he is, he said, I'm going. And next thing I know, I got a call, and I had to meet with Secret Service, and that's the process of this book. It was a roller coaster ride since then.
Well, if you want to get more of the book is called Knockout. The author is Julio Pabon here in studio, the man who literally invited Fidel Castro to the Bronx in 1995. Wish we could play the tape back of what that was like, having Fordham Road shut down and really the
Helicopters,
whole... Yeah.
Deegan Expressway,
it was
gunboats.
It was a major day in the borough of the Bronx. But if you want, please get a hold of his book. You'll find out more about Knockout. And Julio, once again, thank you for coming and sharing
Thank you.
with
It's always
us.
a pleasure being here, man.
All righty, Julio Pabon, the author of Knockout. Listen, got to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to tell you what President-elect Donald Trump has been up to lately as he prepares for his first day at the White House. Don't go anywhere. Our political segment continues.